Okay, would everybody please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilman Hartzell, will you lead us in a prayer, please?
Our Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful town that we live in. Thank you for all the blessings that we have received. The summer has certainly been better than we ever could have expected, and we thank you for that. But we must remember that our people aren't doing as well as we are. We want you to keep them safe, and if they need help, please reach out to the many community organizations that we have. Our town rallies, we work together. We have plenty of great citizens and volunteers that are just a phone call away. We need to work together to continue to go through this pandemic, but we appreciate so far everything that's been given and done for us. Tonight, Lord, we also thank all the veterans who risked their lives, lost their lives, so we could be here and speak. We thank you for all the people that come and want to be part of the process to exchange ideas, and we encourage that, and we thank you for that. But at this time, Lord, we've lost 2 members of our community. Please keep their families in prayer, keep their families strong, keep their families with the ability to remember the good times and get through this time of sadness. And that's Dutch Huber and Joe Callahan. Joe Callahan was the father of our former police chief, Chad Callahan. 2 important families in our town. We just want you to look after them and put a special blessing on them. May everything we say tonight be to your honor and glory. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bergman, Mr. DeFleeger, Mr. Hartzell,
Here.
Mr. Levchuk,
Here.
Mr. Madden,
Here.
Mr. Rotundi,
Here.
and Mr. Barr.
Here.
And Mr. DeFleeger.
Has just arrived. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given pursuant to Public Law 1975, Chapter 231. Please, at this time, please silence your cell phones or place them on a vibrate function so that you do not disrupt the meeting. And before we begin public comment this evening, we have a couple announcements. First thing is, we are going to be bringing forward at the next meeting a ordinance to deal with the beach fee, the beach buggy fee. We've been working with the Beach Buggy Association on that, and we believe we've reached an agreement that will be satisfactory to all the public, and we'll be bringing that forward at the next meeting. Secondly, we're going to turn it over to the administration for some reports.
Thank you, Council President. Our first report is from our Community Services Director, Dan Kelchner, who's going to give a brief report on a program the city's Community Services Department is working on in conjunction with the school district. Dan?
Thank you, sir. Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
All right, how we doing tonight?
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
So what we'll be working on is a series of fall youth camps, including sports camps and clinics, with the overarching goal of kind of supplementing socialization, physical activity, and outlets for kids here in town for the fall, as long as we have daylight and warmth on our side. With the school district's cohort of 2 days on, Wednesday no one at school, and Thursday, Friday being a cohort B, we have kind of heard a lot of need for, I'm hesitant to say childcare, but something certainly in that vein. Again, our emphasis is going to be on socialization and coming up with supplemental activities. For instance, the intermediate school does not have, they're not going to have sports this year. So we're looking for outlets for those kids and for youth. And just to go through real quickly what we have here for our youth camps, we'll be looking at a Monday through Friday, 3 hours in the afternoon, to provide also an outlet for parents that might need childcare to get some things done or get work done at home. We'll be using various locations around the city, including A Street Rec Playground, Palmer Field right here, and Music Pier, and beach areas. We're making sure that we price this as low as possible so that we make sure that we can access the families most at need within the community. And for right now, we're still kind of throwing that around a little bit, but right now we're looking at most likely in the $25 a week range with scholarships available for families that need it most. On the sports side, we're going to go with cross-country, field hockey, basketball, soccer, and extended hours for our skate park. Now, after saying all of that, the key emphasis, and I'm sure the questions everyone has, is what are we doing in terms of COVID policies and procedures? And for that, I'd like to let everyone know that over the course of the summer, we ran our morning sports program, which typically runs here at 18th Street. A lot of you would see them out there in the mornings. This year we ran it over at Tennessee Avenue Sports Complex, as well as a number of other sports camps and clinics during the summer. We were largely successful. We had no issues in terms of any COVID transmission or anything like that. What we did was we followed the state and the county and the CDC guidelines requiring masks, screenings, temperature checks, all that. And all of that would be in place just as we had run it during the summer, if not with more emphasis. Right now, we're just looking at a 7-week period to run this through the end of October up until where we hit daylight savings, and we would be forced to hold a majority of our programs indoors at that point. Right now, that's not advisable, so we're focusing on outdoor sports activities and programming with the emphasis on providing an outlet for kids to learn, grow, and socialize in a structured and fun environment outside of the traditional school day. I have to say, with that said, I think personally that it's an incredible approach for us and a very unique opportunity as a city to really help our children and families in needs and provide outlets for those youth where we, in a traditional sense, we would not be able to do so. Also, it provides a few hours of daily relief for families who might, to do work, to do grocery shopping, to do things like that. I really think this is going to be a lot for families to handle. In essence, again, it's 7 weeks. It'll be ending 10/30, and we'll reevaluate at that point. That's pretty much the gist of it. Does anyone have any questions or anything, any curiosity about it? Good with it? All right.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not a question. What if there's a child in town that can't afford it? Like, can you run a sponsor program?
Yes,
Maybe
we
can
have
sponsor
scholarships
them?
available. And as part of this, kind of as this need became obvious to us, it was working with OCNJ Care, the chamber, the school district. There's been multiple parties kind of involved here. And really our emphasis is to make sure that the children that need those scholarships would be at the forefront of these services. There will be a limited capacity due to restrictions such as social distancing, everything being outside and things like that. So it's really, I think the demand will be hopefully neck and neck with what we're able to supply, but our emphasis will be on the students that need it most.
And just Ocean City school kids?
Yeah.
Is it only?
Ocean City school kids, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Kelsner at this time?
I just want to thank you for your hard work. I think it's going to be probably well utilized and gives a lot of people a break because the spring was a bear with all these changes in people's lives. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
I agree. Awesome program.
Definitely. And want to give kudos for the support from all of you, as well as the administration, and hopefully making this a reality and really being a giant, giant help and an ease to the families and kids in our community. So, thank you guys.
Who's next?
Just to touch with Dan, the one thing community service has always been is about the community. And, with all the special events that we don't have anymore, the one thing I told Dan is the families are so important right now. And with mental health and everything that's going on and the reports that I'm getting, we're so worried about getting sick, but 3 times the worse is suicides and all that, the child abuse. I mean, there's just so much going on right now that, as Americans, we figure it out all the time, but, what's going on now is really scary. So what we're trying to do with Community Services Ocean City is the 25 hours thing, that's, we got to work on that a little bit because, again, the team members are working already. So, it's just, but it's a program that we're just going to start out and see what we can do. I think it's important that our kids get around other kids, and as long as the parents, and we can do it safely. Which brings me, I'm just going to a couple things, and Di's going to have a couple things. I do still talk to Shore Medical Center every Wednesday to get my update on what's going on in the area hospitals. Even Philadelphia, all good, everything's down, you know, even with all the panic with everything, with people on the boardwalk and downtown, all that kind of stuff. People are really doing that self-responsibility kind of thing, which is important. So Ocean City's been pretty lucky with everything that's been going on. So I hope after the election it all goes away, but we'll see how that works out. But he just said, wash your hands, put your mask on when you can. You know, it's just that common sense self-responsibility thing that we just got to keep on doing. And I know some people hate the mask. They're very uncomfortable, but you know, we have to think of other people and not ourselves all the time. The governor announced this week that he'll allow gyms to open starting September 1st. The fitness center upstairs will be open on Tuesday and require 25% capacity. Members will be able to call a day in advance to reserve a time slot, and a mask will be required. So that's good news. Hopefully some indoor dining will start popping out now. So I'm sure with the mail-in ballots that he'll start opening things up. So we are going to talk and just try to do, and we talked to the clerk's office too, is I know the mail-ins, but they still got to try to make it available for people to vote on that day. I mean, if we can get in line to get shots and tests and all that kind of stuff, I think we should be able to vote. But I'll get off my soapbox with that one. Beach replenishment is now expected to be completed by Tuesday, weather permitting. The pipes and equipment will be gone before Labor Day weekend. Work on the dune crossovers remain to be completed, and the dune grass will be planted later in the fall. So that looks, that project seems to be going good. I think we got a little extra. We keep trying to get as much as we can before they leave. The storm that's hitting Louisiana, you know, you can't think about them with all the things that happened to us here in Ocean City, but I watched it on the Weather Channel last night, and I can only imagine what they're going through. So it looks like it's making a sharp right and heading right for us. So we will be ready, and we'll keep everybody up to date if we need to do anything, but let's just hope it's a rainstorm. But there will probably be flooding and all that good stuff. The Cape May County MUA project on Bay Avenue, they want to start right after Labor Day again. They're going to work on what the old pipes and try to size them up. Bay Avenue has got to be better. They did what they could just to get us through the season, but we will not let them leave until Bay Avenue is back to the way it should be. And then the one thing that we didn't do because of we usually do it during the block parties, but we're going to be able to provide our free paper shredding service on Saturday, October 10th. So residents will be able to drive to Shelter Road to drop off the documents to be shredded. We're also planning to go forward with our annual 9/11 ceremony on September 11th outside the fire department. So, Dottie?
Council, you've been fielding questions about dumpster violations, and we thought we'd give you an update and explain to you what is going on with that issue. Since Governor Murphy's stay-at-home order in maybe March of this year, Code enforcement has received many, many times its usual number of complaints about dumpsters. In speaking to the code enforcement officer, all of the complaints have come from two people. One was an individual who was complaining about a construction dumpster at a construction site in his neighborhood, and all of the other complaints have been from one concerned individual who's very interested in this issue and has been bringing what he believed to be violations to the attention of the code enforcement office. And we appreciate that kind of citizen participation. I think in this case, because of the way our administrative code is written, there's been some confusion as to whether the code enforcement officer has been doing his job properly. And I just wanted to reassure you that in my opinion, he is. And I certainly understand what the confusion is. We have two different sections of our administrative code that deal with, I'll call them dumpsters. There's the section that's entitled Refuse Containers and Dumpsters, which pertains to the refuse containers that are typically behind commercial establishments and that are used for everyday trash. And sometimes they're trash cans and sometimes they're the crates, the dumpsters with the lids. And whether it's trash cans or those dumpsters, they must be covered at all times. That's what the ordinance provides. there's a completely separate section of the ordinance entitled Construction Debris and Material. Now, we think of the crates on construction sites, whether they're on the site or in the road in front of the site, as dumpsters. But those are required to contain the construction debris so that it's not on the site or throughout the neighborhood. And they're required to be removed and emptied at regular intervals. They're not required to be covered. But when you read the two together, that's not crystal clear. Our code enforcement officer deals with these all the time. So of course, he understands the difference. I think what we're going to do is bring forward for your consideration an ordinance that makes it more clear what the difference is between construction crates that we think of as dumpsters and these refuse containers and dumpsters, so that there isn't the concern that construction dumpsters must be covered. They are sometimes covered. That in itself can create a problem with the tarps being stolen. We've had problems with the tarps being torn and becoming debris in the neighborhood themselves. We've had problems with covered dumpsters on a site and then passersby tossing something into the dumpster, and there's a cover on it, bounces off, and that becomes debris. So we're not recommending a change in the substance of these ordinances, but some language that makes it much more clear what needs to be covered and what doesn't. And again, we certainly appreciate, I mean, this concerned citizen has done a yeoman's job of identifying what he believed to be issues. Over the construction code official estimates that he filed 80 work orders. And in each case, the city employee went out and viewed the construction site. If the dumpster was, the crate was full, if they're typically swapped out very quickly. The companies come and swap them out very quickly. But if there was a problem and they weren't, then he placed a call. He said that the contractors have been very responsive. He hasn't had a problem with this. I think the problem is the way these ordinances could be clarified. So we'll bring that forward to you shortly. And then the other thing that I think we're going to see more of, that we're starting to get complaints trickling in, has to do with political flags. We're starting to see a lot of flags other than American flags in different countries and colleges, which are so very typical in Ocean City. We're starting to see flags with candidates' names on them. Just want to remind you and the listeners that those do not require permits. We do not regulate those. You are certainly permitted to put any kind of flag that you wish on your private property. That is not a sign. There is a political sign ordinance which limits political signs to 30 days prior to an election. It's been my opinion that that is not an enforceable ordinance because it's based on the content of the message. And in my view, that is a First Amendment issue, so we don't enforce that. Those are typically the yard signs before the municipal elections. It probably should just be taken off the books because, again, that too is creating confusion. But that's not what we're seeing so far with this presidential election and the congressional elections coming up. We're seeing flags. There's no regulation of those flags. We have had a couple of occasions where a word which I'm going to say might be off color appears on some of the flags. And when we've seen those, we cannot compel those flags to be taken down, but we have on occasion contacted the property owner, let the property owner know that young families have complained about it, their kids are seeing the flag, and in almost every case, the flag is just taken down. That's a courtesy. They're not required to do that. We certainly appreciate it when they do. So if you get questions about flags, people are certainly free to express their political beliefs by flying whatever flag they choose to fly.
Any questions of the administration based on the report, Mr. DeVlieger?
Wow. I've fielded plenty of those calls about the flags from both sides. And I tell them, fly away, you know? I mean, it's America, baby, you know? But no, I don't have any questions on anything else.
Ms. Bergman?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Hartzell.
I guess, Mrs. McCrossin, on the political signs, I guess I hope that everybody that runs for office and all the parties involved would stick to the 30 days, because, I mean, I'm been around long enough to remember all the real estate signs and, you know, how we had to work those out, because you would drive down a section of town and everybody would have a real estate rental sign out, and it kind of looked like the whole town was for sale. And people don't really like the signs. So, you know, I know we can't enforce it, but at the same time, do people really want yard signs up everywhere in their neighborhood, you know, 90 days in advance? So I kind of like the fact that we wait for 30. Everybody locally does. If it was me, I'd have no political signs, because they're a pain in the neck to ask people for their permission and then to put them out. But I would be alone in that, I think. I'm one of the people that, some of the political signs kind of drive me nuts. But, you know, I'm just hoping that we can maintain that, and at least say to people, would you agree to do that? Because I think the 30-day thing's a good thing. Even if we can't enforce it, maybe we should just suggest it as a city amongst everybody that runs for office.
There's certainly nothing that stops candidates from coming to a gentleman's agreement to do that in advance of an election, and that's something that the mayor has said when we've talked about changing that ordinance. Well, you know, perhaps we don't need it. The people running for office could come to that agreement for the, you know, for the public to minimize the sign pollution.
And I hope we continue to do that. I think everybody up here would be in agreement on that. And I also think, I hope the political parties, you know, with the county and the state and the federal would kind of go along with that. I mean, the signs are okay, but a lot of them, you know, it does take away from the charm of the town. And I know that they're necessary, but 30 days is a long time.
Mr. Lovejoy.
I agree with Keith. No reason to restate. And Dottie, thank you very much for clearing up the ordinance situation with the dumpsters. I'm sure some folks appreciate that. Look forward to the new one.
I have no questions, sir.
Mr. Mann. Okay, and the only other thing I'll say before we move into public comment is we've had some requests to make the meeting available via GoToMeeting again. Simply, it is too disruptive to the meeting. The technology just is not there. If you saw our most recent meeting where we attempted to do an on-site meeting and a phone meeting, we can't do it. So a compromise to that is, if somebody wants to participate in public comment but not come to the meeting, you can simply email the clerk your comments and she will record it for the record. And it'll be handed out to each member of council. It'll be read, and we will make sure that the administration responds to it in a timely fashion. So we think that's a good compromise. And with that being said, we'll go into public comment this evening. Because the number of people signed up, everybody shall have 4 minutes to speak. And the first person up, I'm going to butcher this name. Oh, can you help me?
Sure. Looks like Sherry Thompson.
So I apologize. Sherry Thompson.
Thank you. I'll try to go fast. I'm here today as the chairman of the trustee board.
Your name and address for the record?
Sherry Thompson, and my address is 737 Simpson Avenue.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm here as chairman of the trustee board of Tabernacle Baptist Church, 760 West Avenue, the church right across the street from the Acme. I'm here with our church historian and another trustee. We're here because we need your help. To go really quickly, our church was attempted to be stolen from us from the prior pastor, and when we found out about it, we immediately went into litigation, and by an act of God, we were able to stop the transfer really at the absolute last moment. So what happened is, as a result of that, our church ended up, it was fraudulently conveyed into their private names. So then it dropped out of, in terms of our role, it became taxable. So we got it back, but then we got a letter from the city telling us that we had taxes on it. It was like, So we're here because the taxes that were accrued against our property were done, the trustees illegally transferred the property because, as everybody knows, a nonprofit can't be sold. So that's sort of the first red flag. You can't sell a nonprofit. So it's fraud, and we're still in litigation right now. But in the meantime, we got a sign saying we're going up for a tax sale. And that's supposed to happen as of October 1. And just, I'm sort of flying around so I get my time in. This church is not just important to us. It was lovingly restored by a retired builder who just actually passed away, Mr. Dan Murray. The community and community organizations contributed upwards of $400,000 to restore the building. It's gorgeous. If you haven't been, please come by. We're opening it up now. And that's one of the promises we sort of made as we're sort of taking over the church again. We're going to open the doors because the previous folks just sort of like locked it down and no one got to see how gorgeous it is. It was built in the 1900s. It was the first church for the Methodist, the St. Peter's. St. Peter's first church was our church. It was built in 1900 and it was moved to our site 1906. The first pastor to preach was the Lake brother, right? That's Ocean City. So there is significant history in that church and significant reasons why I think it should remain with us. And so we're just here for your help. And I think I skipped a lot of stuff, but I just wanted to make sure I got the highlights in. The most important thing being that it was fraudulently taken from us. And so we're asking that the taxes would be rescinded because you have to have the legal right to dispose of, and they did not have the legal right because you can't dispose of a nonprofit. A nonprofit must be given to a nonprofit. So everything about it was fraud. So we need your help.
Are you finished?
I am.
Thank you.
I've never been here. Do I sit down?
Yeah, this is not really a back and forth or a Q&A.
Okay.
We'll get in touch with you.
Okay, thank you.
Next person up is Phil Fitzpatrick. Is Phil here?
I think he left happy.
Okay. Marlene Shepherd.
I'm going to take this off. Okay, good evening. My name is Marlene Shepherd, and I reside at 103 East 15th Street. I'd like to begin by welcoming our two new council members and wishing them well in their endeavors. I have to read, sorry. Second, I'd like to publicly recognize and thank Susan Hornick for the work being done by her and her team in helping to address our flooding problems. I'm delighted to learn that the city is working with her and together to address these very serious issues. The other thing is that I wanted to mention that I have been made aware that in this city they have allowed members of several boards to stay on past their term limits. And as a former commissioner for the Ocean City Housing Authority, I know that federal law limits terms on the Housing Authority Board to just 2 terms. And I was just wondering that perhaps this city might look into that. Now, I was aware, I know folks who have applied for vacancies on boards, and they were told that there were no vacancies or that it was filled. And the same people just stayed there. And we all know that there's some very, very important boards in this city. For example, zoning, planning, the housing authority. And I would suggest, or I would like to request respectfully, that the city look into that ordinance, if there is one, limiting the terms. We really are so concerned about the overbuilding in this city, and we just can't go on willy-nilly having zoning and planning, etc., just agreeing to all these variances. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Hornick?
Suzanne Hornick, and I'm 2962 West Avenue, Ocean City. And for the new guys, just so you know, I really hate to public speak. This never goes well, but I'm going to try. First, I want to apologize for the misunderstanding that occurred at the last council meeting. Ocean City Flooding Committee stated that the city had a personal relationship with ACT Engineers. We should have said an ongoing professional relationship. We used the wrong terminology. That was said for a couple of reasons, including seeing Carol Besky working in the mayor's office on more than one occasion, knowing that she's getting paid by the city to host meetings, we think, representing the city on issues unrelated to contracts that they have. But most especially, we made the statement because of the statement the city had at the end of all or most of the resolutions, stating that we have prior business with these companies. We've used them, we like them. That's where that was coming from. We never meant to imply that the city or anyone working for the city was engaging in anything illegal or unethical, and I'm sorry that you thought that. I'm disappointed that all of you don't know me enough at this point to know that I'm a straight shooter. I have no hidden agenda. Ocean City Flooding Committee isn't trying to catch you doing something wrong. Our only mission is to advocate for a safe, flood-free island for all the homeowners, residents, and visitors, and to encourage the city to use every available resource. I think, however, that it was inappropriate for Mr. Hartzell to ask Mr. Savastano to respond in such a negative way with his leading question. It was equally inappropriate of George to insult and berate us for what he thought we were saying. Moreover, Mr. Barr should have given me the opportunity to clarify the misunderstanding when I asked to, instead of yelling no. I'm disappointed that not one council person thought it important to support all of the residents asking for the resolutions to be pulled for discussion, as is our right as tax-paying citizens. Nor did anyone from council or the city contact us to discuss it further. You've all said you put the residents first, but we were completely ignored. That is not why we gave you the privilege of representing us on city council. Now, again, our concerns are: we need a comprehensive flood remediation and mitigation strategy that will be island-wide for now as well as for the future. We think one plan using one contractor who can do it all for a good price is more fiscally responsible and cohesive. We believe ACT Engineers is the wrong company for the job and has no real experience with flooding in an island. They don't have the appropriate specialists, and they still haven't given us the work we paid for years ago. The work of theirs that we have observed, particularly around 52nd Street, is incomplete and does not look good. Plus $15,000 for a piezometer and monitoring. That doesn't make any sense to us. We have engineers on staff that could monitor it, and the cost is more like $1,500 or less. It's a very simple little tool. If we have to separate contracts, we think they should have gone out to bid. These contracts were worth over $600,000. We want the best company for the best price. We don't like the lack of transparency by leaving 5 of the 10 line items blank, saying we have no value for these things, but the amounts will be added later. Just seems like poor business practice to us. And we think that ACT should know the approximate value of these things. We would like to see all items of a high dollar value, perhaps $25,000, be put on the regular agenda. Putting high-ticket items on the consent agenda seems like they're being hidden to us. They should be discussed with the public. We would like the city to develop a formal plan to put all items paid for with our tax dollars over a certain amount out to bid. And I'll let the rest go.
Thank you. Nelson Dice?
Thank you, Nelson Dice, all lowercase, 12th and Central. I wanted to discuss jurisdiction a little bit more, and I'm asking that people wait about 2 years to investigate the things I'm going to say, because the founding of the country is an amazing story. I recently borrowed a book from the library entitled The British Are Coming. I have a healthy respect for the men and women who fought, mostly men. Their legs were blown off by the British. The king was insisting on being a dominant force. What's the difference between this flag and the one behind the council? This is land jurisdiction. Those three flags are admiralty jurisdiction. I'm going to start reading the Declaration of Independence, and I probably will have to continue next week. When I read it, we always hear the 2 or 3 lines that are pretty cool, but when I actually read the Declaration of Independence, it blew my mind. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Thank you. I'll follow up next time.
Okay. Donna Moore?
Tonight is pesticide night. I'm Donna Moore, Ocean Avenue. I'm sorry? Okay. Okay. Well, I prefer, can you guys hear me
Now
with
we
my
can.
mask?
Good. Now we
Okay,
can.
okay. Well, first things first, I have to deliver what I promised some time ago, which is the copies of my pesticides papers, where I studied the pesticides that I had found out that were being applied in Ocean City. And I promised our new councilmen copies so that they would also have the same documents that I provided for everyone else. So, you. Now, this is a copy, the Flood Smart program brochure is in our yearly
Donna, you have to
taxes.
speak in the microphone.
Okay. But anyway, helpful information that the city has produced for the flood program. And in solutions to stormwater pollution, the first item is limit your use of fertilizers and pesticides. So that's the first item in limiting floodwater pollution in this brochure. This is the 2020 Ocean City Public Landscaping Contract. This is public. After it was advertised, then I could obtain a copy, so it's public. It's also been signed and commissioned. So on page 30, there are specifications that the city has made to the contracting landscaper for pesticides to be applied monthly on public lands. Well, we're thinking about this brochure that says limit your use of pesticides and fertilizers, but the city is instructing on public lands pesticides applications monthly. And I do not know what the current contractor is applying this year, but I know that he applies the same products every year because he has the same city contract every year. So everyone we are all holding up different herbicides that are applied. During the course of the season, 9 herbicides are applied from April through August. Some of them are in combinations of 4 herbicides, including 2,4-D, which is half of Agent Orange. If anyone's familiar, this was used in Vietnam, and the World Health Organization.
Donnie, you have to speak into the microphone, please.
I'm sorry. Okay. 2,4-D is half of Agent Orange. It's an old chlorphenoxy herbicide. It's carcinogenic. It's been proven in multitudes of lab research to be carcinogenic. Is that that's not my time, is it?
Unfortunately.
Don't you take the 4 minutes of the guy that didn't show up?
No.
Unfortunately, it didn't work that way. Good try, though.
Okay, we have a set of minutes to approve. The regular city council meeting minutes of Thursday, August 13th, 2020. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second, Hartzell.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion carries. We'll now move into city council reports. Pete, anything to report?
No reports.
Tom?
No, sir.
Jody?
No.
Keith?
Yeah, I just, it's not a report, but I think I just want to zap this in right now because Mrs. Hornick said, I just think it's important. And some of it will relate to asking George a question or two. I appreciate the, the apology and the explanation. And I'm in the same boat. When I asked George the question, I'd seen him taking a bunch of notes, and I just should have said, can you answer any of the questions rather than accusations? Although I took most of the letter as accusation, it really could be taken as questions. So when I said accusation, it opened the door to speak about the one thing that Mrs. Hornick talked about, rather than go into the full topic and the full array of the other questions. And so that's a regret of mine, and if anybody knows me, that wasn't my intent, just to focus on one thing. And actually, before this, I went to George's office 2 days ago and apologized to him. I said, I used the wrong word. And so I infused some emotion into it and kind of drug it into one direction when it should have been wider. And all the questions should have been answered. So I appreciate you doing that in the same circumstance. And sometimes in the, not in the heat of battle, I guess, but just while you're up here, you don't always choose the right words and stuff like that. And the ability for either one of us just to say, hey, that didn't go the way we planned, it wasn't what we meant. I think that's very important and a great step in the right direction. One of the things that would really be helpful for us, you don't have to do this. I mean, it's your public comment, not ours. But when we get something, you know, we're going to be told, like, I think 1 o'clock that day, we have some issues and that type of thing, that's great. If we just knew what the topic was, because, and specifically some of the highlights, not everything, still come up and obviously read your comments. But what happened was, is we didn't really know what it was, so almost all of us up here said, hey, George, there's going to be questions about the resolutions, you know, can you open up? So what we're trying to do now, if we know that citizens have questions, and you saw tonight, we opened up and we talked about, you know, the dumpster thing, because we've had questions on it. So I think as a council, we all agree and we're all going to do it. We want to, and the administration, we want to be more responsive. And Mr. Breeden did that for us a while ago. He kind of gave us an indication ahead of what was coming. And Mrs. McCrossan was able to answer it, and he was very satisfied with that. So if you could do that, that would be great, because George didn't know where everything was going to come from, and then I didn't do a really good job of following up with the questions. So, you know, it's really on me because I kind of asked the question. But all of us up here cared about what was coming because we all wanted George to be prepared. And I think that's what I'm really trying to say is, if we have a little bit better knowledge of what's coming, George can be prepared because there's so much to this. And I did look at some of the concerns that you have, and I kind of thought at the time, the reason why I voted for it is I felt very comfortable with ACT for many reasons. I think the best reason is the fact that they're very professional, they're very well thought of. That's my perception up here. But the other thing is they got us the tip-to-tip dredging, which is just huge. We're the only ones that've got it. It proves they can get a lot done. As far as the citywide plan, we've either fixed stuff or we have it in design. So in some way, it's a citywide plan. Maybe we just need to point it out better. At least I'm satisfied with it. If you guys aren't, it's something we could talk about. As far as 36th Street to 52nd, we did do a railroad embankment study, and the 36th to 52nd is in draft form. So, and that's something I know that the mayor's going to want to talk about once we get through this pandemic. So we have stuff there. I know that there was issues with 15th Street, and I believe that for that, most of that relates back to the 15th Street in Tennessee, and that relates back to Shooting Island. And I have to give Mrs. Moore credit. She gave us a lot of questions, and we got them all answered. And I think that's just huge because that really helps us. If we know what it is and we can kind of answer them ahead, then when she comes back, it's more like we know what we thought, we know what she thought, and we can give a better response because, you know, she can say, look, I got this response, 5 other things I don't agree with, and that I think it just helps the communication. I'm really glad you did that. And just on Shooting Island, you know, what she did was, and this was really, and our clerk's office really appreciates this, she asked ahead what documents she could get that would be relevant. So what happens is a lot of times our clerk's office has to go around looking for all this. So instead she went to George and Doug and got a list, which now that makes everything more efficient. And then once you get that information, you can come back to us and we know what you have, you know what we have. And I think the public comment section would probably be a little easier. And just the detail of what we did with Shooting Island, just to give you some ideas. There was a sediment evaluation, there's analysis of the restoration, there was an active management plan, there was adoptive plan, there was a response letter to USACE, I'm not sure exactly who that is, getting us the pending permit to do the restoration. There was a basis of report, and that went to the DEP, the National Fish and Wildlife, the NFWF grant, so, and again to the USACE. So, and I'll give you the rest of them very quickly. There was a basis of design report, there was a historical overlap map, there was an aerial comparison, there was a restoration project, there was a New Jersey DEP permit approval, another New Jersey DEP approval, a USACE approval, a final phase, and then a National Environmental Policy Act approval. So when we do these things, there's a lot of hoops, and there's all these other organizations, and I think that was what Mr. Barr was trying to say before, that it's a culmination of a lot of work, and all these folks took a look at this, and we're okay with it. And that doesn't mean that you can't object, or that you have, scientists that have something else, but all this is a bunch of government agencies that we have to go through. So I just want the public to know that we take great care in doing this. If there's things that that you have issues with, and we can get it specifically what the scientists have said and something from the scientists, that would certainly help. But it made me feel very comfortable that ACT was involved in all this and was able to kind of pull this all off. So that's kind of why I was in the situation of, hey, I want to move forward. The other thing I want to talk about is personal service contracts, because personal service contracts aren't like bidding. When you buy a fire truck, you put it out for bid. But personal service contracts are controlled by the state, and we have mandates. And not to go into it lengthily, but a personal service contract basically looks at two factors. They call it price and other factors. And the other factors are how they're going to perform at the job. So to make this really simple, when most of us hire somebody to do something at our home, we don't necessarily hire the least expensive person. You try to hire the person you think is going to do the best job at the best value. And our professionals felt that that was ACT. So, and I felt the same way too. And kind of just going back and looking at all the stuff that we had to get through, and they had to get through, because we couldn't get through that. We needed ACT. And in fact, let me say this about ACT. We have a great engineering staff, but when you start dealing with all these agencies, if you don't have somebody that knows how to do that's respected by the agencies, it really makes it difficult, and ACT's very good at it. And again, I can only say the tip-to-tip dredging thing is really proof of what they're able and capable of doing. So the other thing is, there was questions raised about 52nd Street. That was not ACT, that was somebody else. I'm not at liberty to get into who that was. So I hope in a brief way, I gave you some indication of why I was able to move forward. The only thing that I didn't research ahead, which Mr. Savasano can respond now or later, that's up to him, was about the $15,000 monitoring and the blank lines. But I think I covered all your concerns. We don't take it lightly up here, and neither do you guys. And I appreciate the fact that hopefully we've cleared the air and we can move forward, because that's what we need to do. We all need to work together. In our situation up here, we are happy with ACT. That we just are. We can talk about it more, down the road. But the flooding situation is so bad that any hesitancy to do it something or fix something just didn't seem right to me when I felt comfortable in where we were. And I certainly could have done a better job addressing those questions the last time, and letting people know where we were coming from. And again, if we got just what they call a Cliff Notes version, or even an outline, hey, we're going to discuss 52nd Street, Shooting Island, the broad-based report, and the fact that we don't think these were done correctly, at least George would then have the ability to say, okay, these items are coming at me, I'm going to try to open up with that, like Dottie did tonight, and like George did last week. We opened up what we thought your concerns were, but we didn't know. Well, tonight, a citizen sent us an email basically saying these are my concerns, and it was, again, very quick, just kind of just a small outline. And I'm sure this citizen, knowing him and like him and respect him, he's going to have some comeback on it. I'm not saying that we answered all his questions, but I just think it adds into a more fruitful experience for both sides. Because we don't have a conversation back and forth, but certainly I think if we can respond specifically, at least then the next time you can come up, hey, we heard your 5 explanations, we agree with 3, 2, we don't. And just kind of zone in on those as we try to work and grow together. But again, I do appreciate Mrs. Hornick coming up and saying what she said, because, what I learned from this was, unless somebody's accusing somebody by a particular name, I'm going to just think, I don't know who they're saying it about, because we made an assumption, and she's explained that that's not what she wanted to do. And the other thing is, if there's really a specific person mentioned a specific act, I'm just going to do my best to say, okay, I don't know what that is, I'll find out later. Because then that doesn't drive the conversation to a place where people are defensive. We need to be not that way with each other. We need to be more responsive to what each other is saying and try to give our opinions to one another in a manner that we're doing tonight. And I just want to say thanks to the Flood Committee for coming up and saying that. And hopefully my explanation will be received well too, and we can all move forward. And I just wanted to take care of that now, because that's opposed to pending business, because I thought, if they want to leave, they can. Normally it would be a pending business thing, but since Mrs. Warnick spoke about it, I thought it was important to do that, and I thank you for the time.
Excellent. Ms. Bergman, any reports?
Nothing for me.
Mr. DeVliger?
I'll just say along that topic that it's, I don't know if the term's a teachable moment or a learning moment, but for all involved, I think that I wasn't necessarily involved in the fray so much in the verbal conversation, but I can say that I think I perceived something with less than an open mind maybe, but I perceived one thing, and what you said tonight is what I perceive as another. And I respect you coming here and saying that, Ms. Warnick. And I hope that clears the air. If we were less than cordial in response, I hope you understand maybe it was just miscommunication. These are important projects. I think that reputations are built on credibility is earned and reputations earned. And I think the administration in the last 10 years or so, at least since, I've been around going into my 9th year, has, and certainly started before me, but has had credibility relative to the flooding, for the streets, general, the overall infrastructure of the city. A lot has been taken on and a lot has been accomplished, and we don't plan on stopping that. And if we can all communicate a little bit better, to Keith's point about emailing in advance, just some not that afternoon or but a couple days in advance, that's terrific. It really helps. I think that's helped us with FIT communicate better, and I think it takes a lot of that misunderstanding out of it. No one feels like they're necessarily getting attacked or on either side, because we're all on the same side. We're supposed to be, at least. So hopefully it's a learnable moment. With regards to Ms. Thompson that came in earlier, can we look into that matter and see? Yeah. It would certainly be a shame to see a religious institution penalized for someone's.
It's government at its best, Councilman. So I know, we helped on that church. I'm disgusted with what happened. And again, because of government laws, it makes it very difficult for us. But we have been working with them. So again, I appreciate them coming in here. And, again, if I had a magic wand, I would make it all go away. And everybody knows that. So, but we are working as hard as we can on it.
Appreciate that. That's all I have.
George, was there anything you wanted to respond with regards to public comment or anything up here?
I'm good.
Okay. And with that said, we will move into the consent agenda. All resolutions are considered routine in nature and shall be enacted by one motion only. If the mayor or any council person wishes a particular resolution to be pulled or considered separately, it shall be removed from the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything to be pulled at this time?
Councilman, I need to request that number 15 be pulled. It's a rough draft of number 24 that got away from me. 24 is the complete resolution, so I'd like you to pull 15. It's duplicative and incomplete.
Okay. Can I have a motion to take up the consent agenda, please?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. DeFleeger?
Yes.
Mr. Hartzell?
Yes.
Mr. Levchek?
Yes.
Mr. Madden?
Yes.
Mr. Rotundi?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes. Any pending business, Mr. DeVliger?
Nothing pending at this time.
Excuse me, Mr. Barr, even though this was a mistake, I think you do need to go out to the public on the pulled resolution.
Okay, so which one, 15? Is there any public comment with regards to resolution number 15 only? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on resolution 15. Now, any pending business, Mrs. Bergman?
Do we need to vote on the removal of that?
I would ask you to vote on it, and I would recommend that you just vote no on it, and that'll kill the resolution. I'm sorry about this, Mr. Barr. It's
No,
an
that's-
unusual situation, so there's no way you would know how to deal with this. But if you would ask for that motion in the affirmative, and then I would ask council to vote it down. It's not
Okay,
what I
so-
intended to put before you.
So you want me to ask for a motion to approve resolution 15?
Yes, please, and ask for a second, and then take a vote.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve resolution 15, please?
So moved, Hartzell.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Ms. Bergman?
No, right?
Mr. DeFleeger?
No one's used to that.
Mr. Hartzell?
No.
Mr. Levchek?
No.
Mr. Madden?
No.
Mr. Rotundi?
No.
Mr. Barr?
No.
Thank you.
Now, third time's the charm. Mrs. Bergman, any pending business?
Yeah, I want to follow up with Ms. Thompson. I don't really understand what the problem is, so can you explain it to me?
Property-
It's taxes, isn't it property taxes our responsibility to go after it?
Properties owned by churches are typically exempt from property taxes. That church passed out of that real property passed out of the hands of the church to a private citizen and lost its tax exemption. Through the litigation, it was conveyed back to the church. But for the period of time that it was in private hands, taxes were assessed. And the city doesn't have discretion as to when to impose taxes and when not to. It's a very strict statutory scheme.
So could we forgive it as a city?
No, we cannot, just as we could not forgive your taxes. Taxes are, I'm sorry to advise you of that. So,
So then we can't forgive it, but?
no.
What about, wouldn't the person who owned it prior be responsible for those taxes?
If that person still owned the property, but taxes are assessed to the current owner of the property, and right now, the current owner of the property is this church. So they are in litigation, and I think one of the things they're asking the court to do is void that deed, and that may change our position, because then we may be able to treat it as if the transaction had never occurred. But we can't stop the process in the meantime.
But could we freeze the actual trying to collect the funds and putting them, closing their doors or whatever by October, like she said?
So when there's a tax sale, it is the sale of a tax certificate representing the delinquent taxes on a property. And it cannot be foreclosed for 2 years. So even if the property were to go to tax sale, it would not require the doors to be closed. It would mean that interest continued to accrue, and whoever held the tax sale could pay the delinquent taxes and increase the amount that's owed. But we'll have to see how the court handles this.
So right now, they're safe until
Right.
it goes out of court.
If by safe you mean they
We're
don't,
not collecting money off of them right now.
well, they owe taxes. The city is in no event going to close their doors,
Right.
but they owe taxes like any other delinquent taxpayer. Hopefully, there will be a judicial resolution which addresses that obligation. But the city can't, as the mayor said, if he could wave a magic wand, or if I could bring forward an ordinance before you so that you could forgive the taxes, we would have done that already.
Okay.
We're not able to do that.
We've been working on this for a while.
I know, thank you for clearing that up.
Very frustrating.
Pending business, Mr. Hartzell.
Yeah, To that point, I know you've been working a long time because I've been, I actually, when they have an event there, I go to that church, I can walk to it, and she's right, the inside is knocked out. I'm telling you, it's beautiful. And I guess just one more part of it, Mrs. McCrossin, and I hope I'm right in this, but I think what happened is they knew it was fraudulent. So normally when you buy a property, you go to a title company, there's a title search, and these types of things come out, and then they get rectified. Am I correct in that? So normally that's a procedure that had that tax been there, if they were, let's say, buying it, that would have came up, correct? That's why you do a title search.
Yes, typically that would have happened,
That's-
but instead what they did was they reversed a conveyance which they believed to be fraudulent, just with the execution of a deed.
Yeah, they did, well, I think they did a quick deed, correct? And I think the
A
reason.
a quit claim deed.
So I just want people to understand, the reason why they did the quick claim deed is because they were at the 11th hour and they had to. So they were in a situation, if they didn't do that, they felt they wouldn't get the church, so they were between a rock and a hard place, and then they've gotten caught because Mrs. McCrossin's right, she's explained this to me as well, that we can't alter how we collect taxes, it's by statute. So they have to go after the previous owner, and if they can't prevail, then we're gonna have one whale of a fundraiser, because that's switched back now. They won't owe taxes going forward, correct?
There's a procedure that they need to go through to regain their tax exempt status.
Right, so they'll do that procedure, and then there'll be a gap of some taxes that will be owed, but I would think if this town got together and raised $400,000, I'm certain that we can raise that amount, and I can tell you right now, I'll be as active in that as I can, because I love being able to walk to church. It's a great thing. It's one of the best parts about living downtown. I thank you so much, Karen, for bringing that up, because it's something that's near and dear to me and close to my heart as well, and I'm sure it would be the minute you walked in that church, I could tell you that. I did want to say something really quick about the two people and the families I prayed for. First, Dutch Huber has some children, lives here in town. He was a local businessman. But more importantly, and I'm allowed to say this, Dutch Huber started the Narcotics Anonymous in town over 50 years ago. And a lot of people didn't know that. He didn't really talk about it. But I can tell you that, when I went to the services, the amount of people that I knew there, and I'll just say I knew they were in NA because they're my friends and stuff like that, the amount of people that were there from NA was staggering. And all I can say is that Dutch Huber saved a lot of lives by bringing NA here. And if he was here, he would have no hesitation in telling you his story, but he's not. But I think, that's the kind of stuff behind the scenes that people do that take zero credit for. No one ever really talked about it. In his passing, it should be noted he was really ahead of his time in trying to fight now the opiate crisis. He was 50 years ahead of his time of trying to get people not to take drugs through his own personal experiences and helping so many folks. And I can tell you, I saw people there, just crying because of what he did for them. And I think it's important to recognize that in our citizens when they do something that I'm certain people knew that were related to it, but I don't think the rest of us really understood. And I have a much better understanding now from being at that service and talking to some of the folks. And also, Mr. Callahan, he was very active in the town. He was active in our VFW posts. He was a veteran. He was a former policeman himself. I don't know if he was chief. I can't remember. But I think he was way up in management in Pennsauken. And obviously he's Chad Callahan's father. He turned out pretty good. In fact, he turned out very good. So, again, another guy that kind of touched our town and through his family touched our town. And I just think, I like to do these types of things when people pass. Their life means so much more than just their passing. It means this, the sum total of what they've done in their lives that were exceptional. And I think both of these gentlemen were exceptional people. And that's why I prayed for their families and comforted their families and just wanted to say a few words about them.
Mr. LeChuck.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Mr. Rotundi.
I just want to take a moment to thank the Coalition for a Safe Community. They came back into our community again and parked at Peck's Beach Village, and handed out backpacks filled with school supplies. So I want to thank Chairman Perry May and Pastor Tom Dawson, along with Assemblyman Anton McClellan, President Bobby Barr. The Chief of Police came out, and it was a good day. We handed out probably about 150 backpacks to kids that are in need in Ocean City, so it was a good day. So I just wanted to give them recognition, and that's all I have.
Mr. Madden?
No pending business.
Mr. Madden, any new business?
No new business.
Mr. Rotundi, any new business?
No new business.
Mr. Lovechuck?
Nope, nothing new.
Mr. Hartzell?
I'm good, sir.
Ms. Bergman?
None for me.
Mr. DeViger?
Just a quick question, administration. I meant to ask it earlier, but the netting contract that we just went back out for, is the storm damage to the previous netting, is that worth filing a claim for? Can we recover those monies, or is that?
I think we will put in play for that. We will. I mean, Frank can speak to that through. Okay.
I'm just saying, if, every dime counts, right? So, thank you.
Okay, we shall now go back out to public comment. Reminder, you cannot speak on the same topic twice. Is there anybody for public comment at this time? Mrs. Hornick?
Okay, Suzanne Hornick, 30th and West. Thank you for your apologies. I agree it was a huge misunderstanding, and that's why I was asking to clarify at the meeting. Once I realized what was going on and that there was a miscommunication, I really wanted to try to defuse that. But again, you, Keith, used the term again, personal service contract, so it's in there. That's where I was pulling it from. It's just, it was my mistake, and I apologize. We will do better with letting you know in advance. I still think if 5 people show up and ask you to pull a resolution, you should pull it because we're asking and we're taxpayers, but at least to have a conversation. Part of the problem is we only get 48 hours to review it, and that's if we open it the minute it comes, but we don't. We have lives. I have 3 children that eat me out of house and home. That's an issue. Maybe if we had 72 hours, that might be helpful. We'll try to do much better with that, but maybe the city could help us with that and give us a little bit more time. I made notes, but you don't want to hear about ACT. I guess that's it then. There was something else I wanted to say, but I don't remember. Ocean City Flooding is going to see if we can't help the church, though, to fundraise and stuff, because it sounds like that's how it's going to have to happen. So if we could just have more communication in advance, that would be great. And Ocean City Flooding Committee will do much better with trying to give you more time to understand where we're coming from. And thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Shepherd?
Excuse me, Mr. Barr, excuse me, Ms. Shepherd. I just for the record, I know that Mr. Hartzell and Ms. Hornick were both referring to personal service contracts. They're actually professional service contracts.
Yeah, I'm
I know
sorry.
that's
I
what
should
they
have
were
said
both
professional.
referring to, but just so it's clear, that's what they were talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I said personal instead of
Understood.
professional. I don't know why I said that.
Mr. President, I want to, Marlene Shepherd, 103 East 15th Street. Mr. President, I want to thank you for your very practical suggestion that if you're unable to come to a meeting, that we can submit our statement prior, because it's very, very difficult to do it online sometimes. I think that's very helpful. The other thing I wanted to mention was, in reading Resolution 24, I noted that the city or someone is building 10 units of 2 and 3 bedroom affordable housing, and it will be managed by the Housing Authority here. And since it is under the Scattered Sites program, I wonder if council could share with us where the city-owned land is so that these buildings can be built.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment at this time? Come forward. Yep.
Yes, it's true. They say timing is everything. I thought the meeting was at 7:30, so otherwise I would have registered to speak. So I waited patiently.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Jackie Walshko, 5009 Haven Avenue. I did send to Bob Barr a letter a couple days ago about flooding. Well, I guess you would call it flooding. It's a drain that's at 51st and West that then crosses because it doesn't empty. It then crosses over to 50th and Haven, 51st and Haven, flows down the street, and then is forced to try to get empty out at 50th, the corner of 50th and Haven. I have a copy of the letter and the photos so that everyone
Submit
can
that to the clerk,
see
please.
it. Sorry?
To the clerk, just hand it to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can't ask a question that I expect an answer to, but if any of you are familiar with what a catch basin is, I wasn't, but I did learn what one was today. And thank you. I'm not sure who I'm supposed to thank, whether it's Bob Barr or the Public Works or someone above, I'm not really sure. But in any event, Public Works came out today. And I actually want to just, number one, say these guys were wonderful. They were very informative. They were very polite. They were very helpful. I really couldn't say enough about these men. And frankly, I learned more from them in that short time they were there than I've ever learned from anyone here or otherwise from the city. Unfortunately, they lifted up the catch basin, and the crazy thing is, what happens is the water, as fast as they could get it out with this big machine and suck it out, what was happening was the water was flowing in. And I said, where's that water coming from? It's coming from, I guess, the bay. And I said, well, why? Why isn't it going the other way? Well, they said there's not tilted enough. It can't drain. It's coming this way. So, you know, that we're always going to flood if these things don't get fixed. And I'd also like to say, in the time that I have left, you know, I've been for 15 years complaining or trying to convince the city to do something about the corner of 50th and Haven. Something was done. I can't find out from anyone what seems to have been done, but it sort of made matters worse because a hump was placed in between the north side of 50th and the south side of 50th, and so that the water can't get to the other side of the street to drain, so it just backs all the way back up to 51st Street. Now, what in the world is that about? And I would also like to say, I have a friends at 33rd and Haven, and I used to have to like put on boots and trudge to go visit them, and boy, you don't have to do that anymore. Isn't that nice for them? Not nice for our neighborhood or our community. There's also, and I think to myself, well, when's that money, those millions of dollars coming our way, is what I'd like to know. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for Marion Park. Phase 1, another phase 2, hey, good for them. Happy for them too. I want to know, when is it our turn? When do we get some of that money spent in my area so that we aren't suffering all the time, so we don't have to put up with people driving through with their big trucks, and I won't say what else I think, and splashing all the, you know, I've been spit on because I've tried to stop people from driving through those flooded areas. I see barriers put up in some neighborhoods. What's wrong with our neighborhood? I don't understand why we can go, I mean, I've been a resident here every summer, for 20-some years. When do we get the attention that some of these other areas have gotten? I just think it's time for us. And one more thing, if I could say it. I would like someone to take a ride out and look at the
Jackie, you have to
driveway.
address your comments through the chair.
Okay, I would like someone to take a ride and go see the alleyway at 50th and Haven. I'll send you all a picture so you can see what it looks like. It's a disgrace, okay? It's really a disgrace. It's dangerous. And that water that's flowing down there, it's always there. It's not safe. It's unhealthy. I mean, if I had this tested, I can't even imagine what they would find there. And one more thing.
I'm going to have to ask you to leave it there. time to talk. I apologize.
Does someone want to talk about trees? I mean, if the trees are so
Excuse me.
important, why
Excuse
not?
me.
Why not do something about it?
Excuse me. Is there anyone else for public comment at this time? Connor?
Donna Moore, same place. I don't know if Jackie was referring to the trees at 52nd Street? No? No, okay. Well, I've sent the proposal. I spent a lot of time researching the indigenous trees and low-growing shrubs, being mindful of the fact that some residents in the Ocean City Homes area of 52nd Street are concerned about their view, and they don't want tall trees blocking their view. And so I proposed a mixture of high volume absorption indigenous cedar trees and also lower growing shrubs and low trees that would also absorb floodwater well, but not block the view as much, and provide habitat for wildlife. We are very concerned about our human population here and providing good life, a good environment, good community life for our humans, but we also need to remember that we're not the only species on the planet, and we need to preserve the indigenous animals that live around us by restoring habitat. 52nd Street would be an opportunity. I have one question about ACT and thank you so much for responding to the, I guess Doug sent me an email with the answers for all of the contracts that were conducted in the studies for Shooting Island. But the city did not feel that there was a need to do a water flow study in the bay. And before we do any more water projects, would the city please consider hiring a hydrologist, an engineer hydrologist who's familiar with water flow in our bays? And now I want to ask a question about the construction crates that are not required to be covered. In island winds and storms, materials can be lifted out of the crates and distributed into the streets and onto lawns. And then they can also go into floodwater and flow out to our bay, wetlands, and ocean. Because we cannot predict when our island winds will suddenly rise. We have gusts that are much stronger than the sustained winds. So we must perhaps think differently about covering these construction crates when they are unattended, because the construction crews are gone, so they're not there to cover the dumpsters if they need to be covered if the winds change. And the neighbors in these areas deserve the right to clean neighborhoods without being contaminated by garbage blown out of these dumpsters. So I think that's a real reason to cover them. And I guess that's about it. I want to say, I'm just going to have to phrase this real carefully, that those things that I was talking about previously contribute to our climate crisis, because the breakdown products.
Donnie, you can't talk of those things.
I know.
Can't do it.
Global warming. We're contributing to global warming by all this stuff. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment at this time? Mr. Dice?
Nelson Dice, 12th and Central, all lowercase. I experience no joy in accusations or finding wrongdoing in others. But when the government of this city allows my family to be abused psychologically, criminally, then I'm now here to ask the council to help. An attorney is a sworn officer of the court. This is just someone else's writing. And by his own admission, as that officer, his duty is to impose the will of the state against the citizen. I'm now reading from official New Jersey State Annotated Section 41, 1-2. Persons required to take oath of allegiance. Every counselor, solicitor, and attorney at law shall, before he enters upon the execution of his trust, office, or duty, take and subscribe the oath of allegiance prescribed in 41, 1-1. I contacted the New Jersey Bar Association. They lied to me numerous times. I have it in writing. They tell me two different stories in writing. They tell me every attorney in this state has a subscribed oath of office, and yet it cannot be subpoenaed. A public servant is guilty of official misconduct. This is Chapter 30 of the Criminal Code. A public servant is guilty of official misconduct when, with purpose to obtain a benefit for himself or another, or to injure or to deprive another of a benefit, he commits an act related to his office, but constituting an unauthorized exercise of his official functions, knowing that such act is unauthorized, or he is committing such an act in an unauthorized manner, or he knowingly refrains from performing a duty which is imposed upon him by law or is clearly inherent in the nature of his office. It's a year in jail minimum. Second degree is actually 5 years. I've had to learn a little bit about the Faulkner Act. Turns out that under 4069A-32, any legislative and investigative functions assigned by general law to the governing body shall be exercised by the council, legislative and investigative. I've been told, go talk to the police, go talk to the prosecutor. We've done that. You know what they do? They cover up because they don't want to admit, which is fair. I've told police lies myself to not get in trouble. The legislative power shall be exercised by the council, including the conduct of a legislative inquiry or investigation. And then finally, 69A-37 in the Faulkner Act, 40:69A-37, investigative and removal powers. The council, in addition to such other powers and duties as may be conferred upon it by this charter or otherwise by general law, may A, require any municipal officer in its discretion to prepare and submit sworn statements regarding his official duties in the performance thereof, and otherwise to investigate the conduct of any department, office, or agency of the municipal government. I believe we do that by resolution. I'm going to be putting in things in writing with names, dates, and I expect the council to investigate because there's crimes being committed. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Hartzell.
Meeting adjourned.